a player, and then off he went to, now he's doing coaching and that, but he's a very interesting man. He's doing his MBA, first of all, in corporate governance and sport, which is quite good. You know, us in the corporate world know the importance of corporate governance. But I suppose it's, you know, I was quite shocked because I thought, oh, corporate governance and sport, is that essential? But it is. It's like any business, and sport is a business. So he's going to talk a little bit about that, but mostly he's going to be talking about his coaching career, what's going on with his coaching, and also the transition from being a player to giving up and, well, retiring. And then what on earth do you do with yourself? And that's quite a tricky thing to have to do with. We've actually dealt with a lot of sports people, well, we've spoken to, who've really found it very difficult to transition between sport and not doing sport. Well, first of all, you're not in the limelight anymore. But secondly, you're not doing that sport every second of the day, and it's very, very difficult. We discussed that with Neil Tovey once, and he said it was really, really difficult. So that's also going to be interesting. But to pose all the questions to him, Sean is going to do all of that. So I've done my introductions, and Sean and Robbie, I'm going to hand it over to you, and you can discuss all the issues that are happening in sport at the moment, including school sport, because I know, Robbie, you're very into development sport as well. So I'm going to switch over, and you two, you can continue. I will, in the meantime, be monitoring all the questions. So please, anyone with questions, send it through. Just to let you know, Robbie, we've got different channels. We've got the people that connect on the Zoom, but being school sport, a lot of the school sport coaches prefer to log in via the website. So now it's a little bit tricky because we've got two questions coming through. So I'll be channeling all of those. So anybody that wants to pose any questions, get onto those, and I'll be in the background monitoring all of those. So over to you two. I'm going to switch off.
Thank you very much, Cassie. And welcome all the coaches to this next edition of the Intune with Coaching webinars. Over the last couple of webinars, we've dealt with a lot of issues in sport, and especially around mental health. And actually, one of the biggest concerns for players at the end of the career is, and probably one of the least concerns of players at the beginning of the career. And that creates huge stress. And that is the question is, what now? What happens when I give up? Or what happens when I retire? What can I fall back on? What happens at the end of my professional career? And a lot of these things can actually be dealt with in the beginning part of their careers. So today we've got a couple of people that actually are attending today's webinar that actually deal quite highly in this, or quite passionate about it, like Robbie is very passionate about this. We've also got Alj de Villiers is here, Alj Fansel is here, and Duncan Woods that are listening in, and they're also very, very passionate about what actually happens afterwards. Actually, LJ, when he did his chat to us, he actually spoke a lot about how important it is to actually have a backup plan. And of course, he's gone to the nth degree, being a university professor now. He's gone from running 400 meters, studying whilst he's running, to actually becoming a university professor. So he's taken it to a completely different level. But there's a lot that we can do to actually prepare ourselves. And so let's welcome Robbie to our webinar. And I think we can start off by actually discussing, how to plan your career afterwards. So welcome, Robbie.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for that kind introduction. Sometimes you guys can embellish a little bit, but I appreciate the introduction, and great to be here, Sean. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
So just to set the scene, Robbie, when you started your playing career, what options were available to you as a player for, like, after you had retired?
The cricket was a lot different back then, Sean. I mean, I think South Africa was just coming into professional sport. We had our first World Cup in '92, which kind of sparked the idea that maybe you could do this long term. But when I was at high school, I was like every other kiddo. You play sport for fun. Maybe you take it up in club cricket, club sport after school, and you go to university like most high school students in South Africa that are fortunate to have the means to go to university. So I didn't really ever think of cricket as a career back then, but I always say that I stumbled onto a cricket career. But it was a great experience. I mean, I never forget. I've made SA schools, and you showed a little bit of talent in terms of what you're doing, but you never know whether you're good enough to play at the highest level. And I think Clive Rice, my parents were very adamant that I got to go to university. They were big on education and driving that. Both my siblings are doctors, so I'm a little bit the odd one out, still trying to catch up with whatever they've managed to do in their academic lives. But yeah, it was like my parents were very determined to make sure that I look after myself and not only think about sport. So, and the late Clive Rice actually gave them a call and said, "Hey, I think you should come to the academy," because at that time the National Academy was in Johannesburg at Rao University, as it was called back then. And sort of from there, you sort of improve, you become better, you develop certain skills, and then I started playing for Eastern Province, and one thing led to another. I started doing well and getting recognition, and all of a sudden I found myself on tour as a 20-year-old with a Proteas in Sri Lanka. 1 minute I was getting these guys autographs a year or two ago, and the next thing I was teammates in Sri Lanka. So it was a great experience, but there was no way I was prepared for that. I don't think today or back then players have the interventions that they are today, where you are given an introduction into the importance of well-being, seeing psychologists, personal coaches, whatever you want to call it these days. That wasn't available to us. So, you sort of it was a little bit trial and error. And I remember going there and not knowing if I was good enough, and for a long time I battled that, because I didn't think that I deserved to be there. Even though I did well, I thought I was still young, and I had goals of playing for South Africa at a certain age. It just came probably about 6 years too soon, and I was ill-equipped for it, but that was part of my journey, and I think it made me realize the importance of you actually have to play a lot more of a mentor role as a coach these days than I had when I was coming through the system.
That's it. I mean, so firstly, but all these new things coming into your mind, you fighting to get into a team. You've gone from a big person in a small pool to suddenly a small person in a big pool kind of thing. And not that there's a lot of people actually involved when you get to the professional stage, but the people that have been there for quite a few years that have established themselves. And above this, you've got to start thinking, well, you start getting a little bit of money in for some of the players that at 18, 19, 20-year-olds sounds like a lot of money, but actually is pocket change. And now over and above this, you've got to start thinking about studying. How difficult is it to actually do all that? And Cricket South Africa have done some things with the academy and with SACA to actually help players think differently to just getting out on the field and playing. So what's changed in those years?
I think SACA has definitely played a role. So having a cricket association, I think they've got some good programs in place. The Player Plus program that you can access funds to go and improve yourself. That doesn't mean you have to be a university degree. That can be any skill while you're playing. It was incredibly difficult. What is a young kid making it? You don't know anything about time management. You just played back then. You played earning money, and you start studying, but you never quite follow through with what you're doing, because at that age you don't really know what you want to study, I find, most of the time. So I always knew I wanted to play sport. That was for sure. And I don't think the courses in sport at the time in South Africa were at the level that you probably would have learned. A lot of people that probably work in sport go study commerce degrees or management, whatever. I didn't think there was anything tailor-made for sport that you could sink your teeth into and learn a lot. So it was very difficult to balance that. But in looking back now, when you are a cricketer, you've actually got so much time on your hands. And it's something that I advocate to our players, that if you have to develop a skill outside of cricket, because once you leave the game, it's a very lonely place. And if you haven't upskilled yourself, I played with some cricketers that basically built their own houses because they learned to do plumbing, building, becoming apprentices to contractors, and they managed to do this and build a house for their families. So there is a lot of time to develop skills, and I'm very big on our players, even if it's little 6-month courses that SACA offer through these various online platforms. And some of them have taken it to heart. There's a couple of guys in our team that actually finished degrees already. So that's really encouraging to know that if cricket doesn't work out, they have developed another skill, whether that's going to coaching or into another line of work which they may be passionate about outside of cricket.
I remember being at a mini cricket festival in Cape Town, and I was talking to Alistair Gray, and he was saying back in those days, and I think I'm not sure if you're still playing for Western Province then, or if you had moved out from there, but he was saying that he was one of the only guys with an actual degree. Now he had also gone on and got his honors and masters and that kind of stuff. And he said that he just found that he had so much free time that he needed to fill it, and he managed to fill it with the degree, but he was one of the only players that actually had gone that far. But that's changed quite a bit. As you said, you've already got currently in your team, you've got a couple of players that have already got degrees.
Yeah, I think you're starting to see the advantages of that Player Plus program 10 years later. So now you're starting to see people that have upskilled themselves, whether it's short courses or university degrees. So that's really good to see and encouraging to see, because initially I think at one point there was like less than 20% of cricketers actually upskilling themselves out of the game. I think SACA has gone up to, and I'm not sure the exact number, but it's at least 50% of cricketers doing something outside of cricket, which is good. It's changed a lot, and SACA's been really good with that. I think that's one of their benefits and probably their legacies that they leave, that they put a few people through, either short courses or university degrees or whatever that may be, upskilling players. So, I was part of that with Ali Gray. I was probably one of the statistics you're talking about. They didn't have much to his name. So I made a conscious effort 2 years ago to try and search for something that I could be, to challenge me a little bit and be a little bit different outside of South Africa. So, I quickly realized that, there are a lot of cricketers that retire and looking to do stuff outside of the game or going to coaching. And there's only so many that can coach. So, I decided to find something, and fortunately I found something challenging, and fingers crossed I can finish it this year. And it has been a great ride. I mean, I've learned a lot, in terms of the important things of sport, whether that's leadership, coaching, governance, creativity, innovation. All these things were part and parcel of our course. So it was fantastic. And just the networking you do, the older you are, it's great.
Because let's be honest here, besides for like an AB de Villiers, or who signed that, $100 million contract for a bat contract, or a Quinton de Kock, truthfully, the kind of money that you guys earn actually doesn't last. Once you're 40, or most players in the mid-30s, when they retire, they've got another 40 years left of their lives. That's not much money.
Yeah, as cricketers, you got to realize you earn back to front sometimes. You start at a little, then it slowly increases to a lot, probably to the last between 5 to 10 years. So, there's a lot of years left when you retire. There's some players that are really smart with their money and get some really good advice, but there are others that probably don't, so, and that's probably the majority of cricketers. So that's the importance of having an education, I believe. AB de Villiers and Quinton de Kock, it doesn't matter how much money you have, I believe. You've still got to get out of bed and do something that, sort of gives you a little bit of energy and fire that you're keen to do. I don't believe that you can just play cricket and earn all this money and all of a sudden what you're going to do, just go fishing and play golf. I don't think that's, I've never been in that position personally, but I couldn't think that that's a healthy way to live. You still got to add value and and challenge yourself. You've challenged yourself for so long that you just got to find something else to challenge yourself now, outside of maybe time when you have to spend with your family. So regardless of the amount of money, I just think that you have to do something that that gets you out of bed every day.
And it's much more difficult when you're approaching the end of your career in your late 30s to actually try and now find time to sit down and study. It's you kind of, at school you're used to studying, but once you leave school for such a long time, it's very difficult.
Yeah, it's very difficult, but you know, if you have the drive and ambition and application, anybody can do it. It's not a case that you can't do it. You just have to find something that interests you. I think, you know, once it interests you, you're gonna sit. It's easier to sit in the desk and type away and read. You know, if you're just gonna study for studying's sake and not knowing what you're gonna be passionate about, then there's no point in really going to study. It's better to probably upskill yourself in, you know, something else. There are very few guys that can actually have the discipline to do it. I'm not saying I'm disciplined. It's very hard for me to find a balance with these things, but it's something that I committed to, and you know, I'm determined to do. So anybody can do it, but it is tough. That's why I'm always an advocate for young players in my team or in our team to do something, because actually a lot of them are quite smart and intelligent. It's just about finding the discipline and the time to chip away at something over a long period of time, because I believe it makes them better cricketers too. You know, they don't throw all the eggs in one basket. They do have a little bit of freedom if this doesn't work out. And it sounds like an oxymoron, but it takes the pressure away. And the more you can take the pressure away from a player, I think the better you will perform on the field. You'll get better outcomes in the cricket career. So to me, I'm glad that a lot of our young players do it, but a lot of them are probably not taking it on quick enough, and they're probably going to wake up 5 years down the track.
There's a question that came in from our followers saying, whilst you were playing, what did you think your future career would be?
When I was at school,
or even when you were playing it initially, when you started playing at after school?
Well, after school, I always thought I wanted to go into the medical field. As you can see, both of my siblings are all doctors, so I was probably looking to go into that space, or architecture. Was things I looked at high school to get into, but you know, I wouldn't swap anything. That, you know, I've been very fortunate. I mean, you know, that's the thing that you look at. Like, I look at my brother and my sister, but yet my experiences of the world, you know, far outweigh the degrees and the PhDs that they have, you know, and the things I can sit and talk about, there's no way they can talk about, because they haven't built up those experiences traveling and playing the game and meeting people from all walks of life. So there are advantages and massive advantages to what I've done, because if you look at the world today, the world's a lot more global. You know, you can, like we said, you're sitting in London, I'm sitting in Port Elizabeth, and we in a webinar, and that's the way it is today. You know, so these experiences that I've met people like yourself, you know, have given me the opportunity to speak to people on this platform. So I couldn't take anything away, but I do think that you need to plan life after cricket. I do see some older players get very anxious, and the anxiety levels are starting to be heightened now as they're in the back end of their careers, and they haven't done anything. So, I mean, that affects their well-being too. And I can see the anxiety that leaves, and every bad performance, they're worried about the next contract. So, like I said, if they had something to fall back on, it would alleviate all that pressure, and it probably lead to better outcomes on the cricket field.
This is slightly off the studying part, but did CSA help with managing the media? The person that's asking the question is a soccer person. They said that they find that the cricket media is a lot harder on cricketers than what the soccer media is on the soccer players.
Yeah, it is two different spaces. I do think in a cricket, because you're so isolated, it's a team sport, but it's made up of individual skills, you know. So when you're bowling, the camera is all on you. So the scrutiny is a lot more, I think, when you make a mistake. As a cricketer, as a footballer, you could make a mistake. Yes, it may lead to a goal, but 10 minutes later, you could do something extraordinary and you could win the game. So it is two different sports and how people report on the game. But when it was the National Academy, we did do some work in terms of media training. We did a lot of work at the Super Sports Studios when I was at the National Academy. My first year, I mean, there were players like Grant Elliott. A lot of the guys that were played under 19 cricket with were, at that academy, and we learned a lot. Nobody ever teaches you how to deal with the media, but I do think that sometimes you sort of lose the personality a little bit today. I feel cricketers sometimes, when I listen to them do interviews and who they are, it's not the same person. And I find that because sometimes you can try and over-engineer things, you're losing the personality of the cricketer through what he's saying. But yeah, we did do a lot of training with it. I think it was interesting because when we used to go on cricket tours, because there were two countries that they made a very big effort to train us up, was when we went to England, because the English media are very ruthless, and Australia in their reporting of cricket. So, they had to align the team in terms of, this is the message, this is what we're doing. Everybody's on the same page, and it does really help when you're on tour in a different country. But I think in South Africa, they can give players a little bit more freedom to be themselves.
Yeah, you struggle a bit in the sense that you won't get another like Merv Hughes booklet full of Merv Hughes quotes anymore, because you can't do that. You've got to be very well trained. You've got to be very specific in what you say and that kind of stuff. So I totally understand it. So now, when you're sitting with a youngster that's at school and they're not interested because they've been told they're going to become another superstar or something like that, and they're not interested in studying, how can you actually talk to this player and try and convince this player that they need to do something? I mean, not everybody's going to get a degree, but I mean, there's a player that plays for Border that's absolutely phenomenal with his hands and produces the most amazing furniture. I mean, that's a career after sport. He's already got a company. He's already got something he's created. So how do you convince somebody that they need to do something else?
That's the difficult part. I think a lot of it has to do with the upbringing, what happens in the home, and that's why at that age, the relationship coaches have with the parents is massive. No one can predict whether a cricketer will become a superstar. I mean, I've got incredibly talented young cricketers on my team who people believe they'll play for South Africa and 50 test matches, but you just never know. There's so many things that need to align to become a Protea and become a test match player, that it's not as simple as he's talented. The different things, what happens in his personal life. Is everything okay at home? Can he handle the pressure? He's been made a big deal of school. Now all of a sudden he's come out of schoolboy structure into where he competes with a 30-year-old and he's only 20. So it's very difficult to predict who makes it. And often, parents can be sold dreams by a lot of people where actually we should be focusing on the individual a lot more. It's very difficult to do because as a coach, you've got so many things to worry about, that there needs to be a lot more systems in place, I believe, even at franchise level, even at school level. And that's why I was so encouraged when I went to Peterson High School in Port Elizabeth. I'm not sure if you know that school. The facilities they had for sport, but one of the biggest components they had was their medical center, where there's actually a coach and a psychologist for the kids that play sport to go through for not only the kids but the parents. So I thought that was very forward thinking in terms of a sports school, that they're understanding it's not only about the sport. There's a holistic approach to getting the best out of the kid in his sport and giving him a chance later on in life, but also if he doesn't make it, they're putting in those building blocks in place to sort of say, hey, you got to find an education if this doesn't work out for you. So yeah, it is tricky. It's not an easy thing. There's not a one size fits all approach, I think, and that's why as a coach I think the need for coaches to have high emotional intelligence in today's environment is critical, to understand people or to try and understand people and better yourself to understand people's situations, and being very empathetic, is a massive requirement these days, because I think it does begin at home. Actually, when I was in New Zealand, there was this one kid. He came from a little bit of a tough background. I spoke to the high performance manager when we were touring there. It was under 19 World Cup. And I had spent a lot of time, and I asked him, how do they develop young cricketers? And the biggest thing was, we just try and meet their friends. What's their home life like? So there was a lot of things that they did that I thought was really interesting that we miss out in South Africa a little bit. You know, we take the player and we ask him all the questions to get to know him, but actually to get to know who he hangs out with and what the home life is like, you probably get to know a lot more of them. So I found that a very interesting concept that they employ. And there's no coincidence that they produce really highly skilled, emotionally intelligent cricketers in New Zealand.
I remember with you, we had some kids that came from the other side of the highway from Galvindale. And we had parents, adults talking to them about this was specifically on not joining gangs and not going into drugs and not doing this kind of stuff. And of course, as normal kids, they just shut off. You could see it went in one ear out the other ear. And then you sat down to them and you started saying to them, well, do you know this little shop here? Do you know that angle there, that corner there? And these kids eventually realized that you were from the exact same area that they're from. You grew up running around in the streets where they ran around. And suddenly it made a big difference to them that, hold on a second, this is a guy that actually achieved things and made huge things out of his life. They came from us, from where we come from. So how important is it for actually a role model, even if you go to a big school, getting a role model that actually understands the kids and understands where they come from, to actually say to the kids, listen, you've got to study, you've got to do something else after school, you've got to grow. Then instead of having me coming from Santon, talking to kids and that I don't understand what they're going through. So how is it important having those kind of role models?
It's critically important. I mean, where I grew up in Galvindale, I mean, sport's a massive part of society there. I mean, you have to be intentional about trying to put time into. It's not just a odd practice session. You actually have to go and spend time down there. I think what I've done is I've tried to start playing hockey and spend a lot more time down at the cricket club and hockey club, just to find out like which talented kids are here, and you start having conversations with them, and you find that there's a lot of ambition in those areas to make it in sport, but often you'd find that they don't understand the pathway to the top. They might know that I've made it, or I've sort of managed to play for South Africa, but a lot of them would never know that I grew up there. So when I start telling them about things, I grew up here, I went to that school, and all of a sudden they start looking at you differently. Like, and I've had that happen to me the last couple of months. Was kids are asking, how do you know this place? How do you know? And I point out, no, that's where I used to go and train. Myself, Ashwell Prince, Alviro Peterson, Garnet Kruger. I mean, these are all guys that went on to play. We used to, and you're telling them stories now about how you used to go and play school sport, stories of rolling up the mat. And I mean, they play on pitch, on grass surfaces now. We had to go and play on matting wickets, and how we needed to carry it and knock it down with nails. And that's how we played our cricket on during the week for school cricket and club cricket on a weekend. So, you know, once they start understanding, like, I mean, everybody's on about storytelling and the power of it, but actually it is quite powerful, you know, for kids. And they do look at you differently, and that's probably the fortunate thing that I have again. That's probably my advantage as a coach, is that I could probably understand most of the people on my team because I've seen both sides. You know, I get a little bit of understanding on the kids that go to the sort of private, more established schools, to the kids that comes from a little bit tougher background, not only at home, but schools where there's not a lot on offer for them. So I kind of have that empathetic side for them, yet not to make it too easy for them. I think I always try and tell the kids that is their competitive advantage. It's your toughness. You're gonna learn resilience. You're gonna learn to go again. You know, all these qualities that actually that's what sport's about. You know, that you're living that. You try and encourage them and spin a positive of their background a little bit to them and say that's the quality that's going to make you, if you really take cricket seriously, that's the quality that's going to make you the sportsman. You know, that fight that you have, that hunger, that 3 taxis that you have to catch to a cricket practice, that's going to make you the cricketer you are. You know, and you start telling them that, you know, and all of a sudden you can see that they don't see it as a crutch anymore. you just keep reminding them that and start ingraining it in them, because there are the qualities that have gone out of our sport a little bit in South Africa, and those kids definitely play a massive role if you're going to become world champions. Especially in the cricket space, in my opinion. They're a little bit different. They think creatively, and they're a little bit tougher than you think. So just a little bit of guidance, more off the field, and you could probably get fantastic products that come out of those communities.
I think at Galvindale, I've seen Ashwell there quite a few times, and I've seen you there, but it's actually quite nice that the kids can actually go and see somebody has come back to their communities, and they can actually see that, they can talk to you guys if they've got any questions. Because I mean, I know Ashwell can come back across a bit brash sometimes, but he actually is completely open to talk to absolutely anybody, really. And I see him often talking to kids and helping kids out and chatting to them and stuff. So, but you need a lot more of that, especially nowadays with a lot of kids getting bursaries to other schools, and they leave that area. The kids don't have those role models that they can see, because those kids have gone to other areas. And I know there's benefits in that too. But one of the losses is that a kid still in Galvindale will look around and say, well, there's nobody like me here. What's the point of me doing it? And now they've got somebody like you or Ashwell that's going to sit there and they can see that you guys are there. I think that is so helpful in growing an individual.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only us that's played. I mean, there's Russell Domingo, who's a coach, South Africa, the Proteas. He's from there. Alistair Coetzee is from there. Has also coached the Springboks. Sia Khaleesi is from our neck of the woods. That he also used to play cricket down there. There's a lot of Bafana footballers. Dane Clayton, he still spends time at the club. So, there are guys that they can look up to. The interesting thing is that I find a lot of parents come to you a lot to ask what's required for their kids to get to the top, and it's the same message. You got to support them. Don't put any pressure on them. If they really want to do it, all you have to do is support them. Because I remember I wasn't put under any pressure to become a cricketer from my parents. Ashwell wasn't put under any pressure. But it's something you like. You found that you have a little bit of skill to it, and you may want to take it on as a career later on in life. But I agree with Ashwell. He's fantastic like that. He's got a big heart. He can come across as sometimes people think he's angry, but actually he's very approachable when it comes to topics like this on trying to upskill people and just change perceptions on what people are like from that part of the world. And he gives a lot back to that club. And a lot of people have foundations, and that's magnificent. It helps a lot of kids out. But I still believe your time is more important to give in that capacity. So we try and go there as much as we can. We can't go there all the time, but if we get the time, you go to all the junior events that they have down there, or whether it's hockey, football, cricket, and you just try and show your presence, because growing up in Galvindale, you played all the sports. You don't know what you're going to become. I played hockey too. So I've got a lot of friends in that space. So they often ask you just to show your presence and play with the kids and share your experiences with them from time to time. So it's been good. I've really enjoyed being back in PE. I have to say.
Now, here's a question that's come through. It says, what do you believe you personally sacrificed to become a top player? And how do you teach a player or youngsters that they have to actually sacrifice a lot to achieve a lot?
Well, I think I spoke to someone actually mentioned this the other day. We were talking about the same question. I think it's a great question. Was, your kid's got to hit 2,000 balls a week to become a AB de Villiers? Or actually, it didn't feel like work to us. We wanted to go to the nets every day. We wanted to spend hours there. It wasn't our parents taking us down and forcing us. There's got to be a genuine love, and that you want to do it and you want to get better at it. And that's kind of how it was. Also, we had great coaches. Growing up, we had great role models in coaching and teaching us. What I remember growing up in Galvindale was, of course, part of my life and apartheid and our sport was segregated, and there was this old SACOS, and they were they were very big on junior sports. So we got a lot of attention from the senior team to actually coach us, show us the ropes, come to junior sessions. There was a big senior influence, and they were the juniors were allowed to go and practice with the seniors, and you would get an opportunity to play with them, at practice, and they would help you out. So that whole camaraderie, having, as we said, mentors and role models, and having great coaches to teach you about life. I'm not sure that that's the case anymore that it was when we grew up. So we were at an advantage more than the kids today, I will say. So I think it plays a pivotal role in our South African sport, those communities, I believe. So, somehow we gotta get a little bit more structure and organization back there, and sports being played in schools, because that's the one thing I found is, the school sports and organized sports in school is lacking. It was there when I was there. And often you'd ask kids, are there still school sports there? Cricket played in the schools, and the answer is no. So to me, that's the concerning part about it at the moment.
I remember having, it was actually a Craven Week in Port Elizabeth when we had Bandisa Michael there. And one of the players asked him, how do you balance your studies with sport? And he spoke about, you got to set your priorities, and you're going to have people that are going to distract you and try and take you away from it. But if you really, really want to do it, you'll have a place and time for everything. And he said for him, it was concentrating on academics and on sport. And if his friends wanted to go out partying, he'd say to them, fine, you guys can go. I can't come tonight because I've got training session tomorrow morning, or I've got this, or, something else on. And he said, that's where you actually tell if a kid really wants to do it or not. It's when you actually sit out and make those sacrifices.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're going to have a lot of distractions along the way. It's just you got to figure out what's important. You need people to align you from time to time. I mean, I remember my parents pulling me in and saying, listen, what do you want to do? Is this what you want to do? Because at the moment, you're not probably showing the behaviors that, require you to be successful at that. So whether that was friends, I was very lucky that I had pretty brutally honest cousins. That again boils down to good family structures that I had, that would often put me back into line when they felt I wasn't quite living up to what I wanted to do, and living up to what I said I wanted to do, more importantly. So you need people in your life, and I was just lucky, I'd say, but it is time for me to sort of repay it back. So we've had some kids that you take on board, and you try and sort of be role models and mentors to them. And that's not to say that they're doing it in sport. They going in other avenues in life, academics and whatever, and they're doing really well with the kids. So you try and be that role model now for when they were a role model to you growing up. So it's really important. There are a lot of distractions, but at the end of the day, if you want to make it, you'll find time to do it, and you'll realign. But you do need support along the way. You cannot do it alone.
Now, Wendell Domingo says here that he says we are a province of legends. And I think he's actually quite right, because, and this is historically, it comes down to even during the apartheid days, the amount of cricket players and rugby players that weren't allowed to officially play under the Springbok banner, or were, the non-white players that were actually there, and the achievements that the guys did. And nowadays, books are coming out about all these guys, and it's absolutely incredible the amount of talent and people that we've actually missed out on in the Eastern Cape. I mean, I find myself quite privileged that I've spent many days in Galvindale and talking to guys like Thando Manana, yourself, and a lot of other people around there, where there's things that I've actually no idea that happened, and the strength of the country that came out of Eastern Province. And even now, your top players in rugby are coming out of the Eastern Province. Your top players in cricket are coming out of Eastern Province. Unfortunately, they can't stay there to make it. Well, most of them can't.
Yeah, that's the sad part. You got this talent pool here, and you're not capable, and that's all to do with economics, I guess. Whether that's economics, governance, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, it's the ability to retain your talent. That's the key. But yeah, we hi, Mr. Domingo, by the way. But yeah, I am very fortunate, as I said before, Sean. I was very privileged to have a lot of people that I could look up to, not only in hockey, but cricket. Even the conversations I have, I often go and speak to a guy called Bravo Jacobs, who I'm not sure if you know, is actively involved in the club. He captained EP on the in the Hour Bowl on the when how cricket was segregated, and I often sit and pick his brain on tactics, and it's one of the most incredible sessions I'd ever have, you know. And I'm thinking like the psychology around the game he's talking about. I hadn't actually had conversations with past captains down in PE around like the psychology of the game, and he would often tell me stories about he just declare when the team doesn't expect it because psychologically he just felt that, you know, just little stories like that. You know, those guys were really good cricketers. Of course, when you're playing on facilities like that, your numbers are not going to stack up as a batsman as they do when you're playing on pure pitches like we do these days at St. George's or at the Wanderers. So, you know, a lot of those players average probably mid-30s, lower 30s, but actually they're probably in today's cricket averaging 45 and up, you know, if you had to stack it up in terms of skills and what they had to encounter, you know. So I've got a lot of respect for those guys, you know. The one thing I love about them is that they don't complain. They get on with life, and they're always there to offer, yeah, you know, when you just need a little bit of creative thinking or fun.
Yeah, I find that some of that has actually gone in modern cricket, where you'd have a challenging declaration to entice somebody to go for it. And now there's quite a bit of a fear of losing instead of a challenge to win.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I think a lot of it has to do with our school system. I think it's become so competitive at schools that guys would rather not lose than draw, because there's bragging rights, there's all these things, there's rivalry that dictates these things. But ultimately, I think our roles as coaches at that level in schools to teach guys how to win, how to play the game on the front foot, how to explore their talents. You know, there's no point in teaching a kid just to make 100 every week. If he's talented, teach him how to make 200. You know, can you make 200? Set the goals. You know, push the boat out for his talent. You know, I find that there's a lot of limiting. We limit kids in South Africa too much in terms of cricket. Cricket's quite a creative game. Yes, you need some structure and basics and, you know, all those things, but it's actually quite a creative game because you've got to allow creative license for people to win games of cricket. I mean, you look at it. I mean, Dale Steyn, artist, what he does with a cricket ball. You know, AB de Villiers, an artist, you know, with a bat. Hashim Amla. I think in their generation and the coaches we had always taught us to try and win games. I think we've gone away a little bit from the fundamentals of winning, and because the pressure on coaches to get results at their lower levels, sometimes it's not really about the cricketer. You know, it's all about the result, and that's a bit sad for me, because we have such talented cricketers that you feel that in this country, if we can get it right, you know, on the field and off the field, you know, we're not that far away, but a lot of things just need to align, you know, to get it right at the moment.
Now, there's quite a big thing. You've spoken a little bit about it already, but there's quite a big thing in the UK now, especially after that Man City academy player committed suicide, and, you know, about the roles and responsibilities of schools and of clubs. And I think that comes a bit into, now we're kind of going on to a little bit into your governance side of clubs and things. Now, the responsibilities of clubs, especially now in South Africa, we've got a big historical part, and I know we kind of say we're unique in that, but we're actually not. I mean, sitting in the UK, there's a huge issue with that kind of stuff here too. But the governance now in a club and a school is slightly different. You've got to look at you're not looking at the school and as a whole, or the club as a whole. You're starting to look at individuals and helping out individual players and stuff. How have things changed now in governing schools and things? You've been a little bit involved in that. We won't go into the specifics that you've done, but just like generally from your studies.
Yeah, mine's a lot UK based, so it's probably similar to you know what your experience is at the moment. I think there needs to be a little bit more structure in terms of governance, whether that's pooling together your intellectual talent to sit on a board and come up with really good strategic plans and goals. And as far as safeguarding is concerned, I think, you know, that's a big thing in the UK, safeguarding of kids, whether it's physical or mental well-being. it's got to be a priority in governance too now. You got to have whether that's a committee or something to protect kids. But just to get onto that point, Sean, like our pressure growing up was all about performance. I think kids have got added pressure now at school level in South Africa to win games, coupled with performance pressure when they leave school to social media. Social media wasn't a thing for us. And you can definitely see how it plays a massive role in kids' well-being. But in terms of governance, the first thing for clubs is to create sustainability. However you set up your governance structures, that's entirely up to the club, how they see fit. But it's at the end of the day, if you have poor governance, you're not going to be able to have a long-term vision, a plan. Because you have to create sustainability, whatever that is for your club. It's all about sustainability and ensuring you hang on to your talent. So the better your governance structures, the better your stability is, the better you're going to retain players, and by retaining players, you grow your membership and your sustainability. So it's crucially important. You don't have to go far. We live in South Africa, and to see what poor governance actually does, it's remarkable. Like if you look at loss of talent for South Africa, you see so many South Africans playing abroad. When I say loss of talent, not only from a cricket system, I'm talking playing whether it's the UK, New Zealand, wherever that may be, USA now. It's also people that are turned away from the game because of poor governance, So you might lose people that might say, okay, rugby is looking all right. I think I'm going to turn to rugby. We're all world champions. So it's a lot more competitive to keep people within sport. And cricket's a long game. So, it's even tougher to keep young people interested. So if you have the governance structures in place and you're able to retain that talent and safeguard kids and give them the best opportunity to firstly enjoy themselves, have fun, and secondly see a pathway if they decide to make a career out of it. So it's crucially important. Like they say, everything rises and falls on leadership. So I think it's an important component of whether it's a national federation or a grassroots level club.
Now, because you talk about the vision, the mission of the club, and then the strategy to actually achieve that. So what are the kind of definitions, and how do they actually work together in the three of them?
I think you got to have a vision. That's if you don't have a vision, you're not going to know where you want to go. It's like we always talk to cricketers about your own business, you're your own chairman. How do you do it? You've got to have a vision for yourself, as an organization. Your vision, you need how you're going to implement that vision, why you need it, what type of structures you need in place in terms of governance, whether it's codes, rules, what's the best practice, what type of structure you need to set up for your entity. So, and it all boils down to really to become sustainable. I think there are a lot of good clubs in South Africa that you don't have to go far from to pretty much take that model and just implement it wherever you are. I think clubs like, Western Province Cricket Club springs to mind, that actually a very well-run club in terms of all sports. If you look at Galvindale Cricket or Galvindale Sports Precinct, there's massive opportunity to do exactly the same within a previously disadvantaged community that Western Province Cricket does, where you can get a whole sports club, and pooling together resources, which means you probably going to be an attractive proposition to members, and all of a sudden you're going to create sustainability and hold on to your talent instead of that talent moving off to a club that's maybe a little bit better organized. And all of a sudden the results will speak in the coffers and in terms of talent you're producing and honing for not only for the province, but to go on to play for South Africa or internationally.
There's a question here that says, with the new format and the new cricket unions, the new format in Cricket South Africa, will each union be separate and be able to have their own, create their own governance there and their own structures, or will they still be working together under a bigger Cricket South Africa and be able to exchange information amongst each other?
That's probably something that's lacking. I think that collaborative collaborative advantage that they could probably have is people don't really communicate well in terms of that. But every province will have its own governance structures to run. They still businesses, whether they, they'll all have a commercial arm and a non-profit arm. So they will need their own governance structures, but operating under the Cricket South Africa umbrella. So it is nice because I think it's put a lot of pressure on provinces now to ensure that their governance is in a good state. Because it's all about sustainability. You have to create a pipeline. You can't rely on Cricket South Africa funding anymore. That's got to be almost surplus. So you got to find ways to ensure that you're sustainable. Create your own pipeline, your pathway, and make sure you got to make sure your club cricket is governed well. Because if that's not governed well, you're going to struggle to create a pathway and pipeline into your main team, which now each province is responsible for. Whether that's an academy, your club system, your school system, you're solely responsible for that now, which I think is great because it puts the power in your hands to change things. But it's also a little bit daunting because now the ownership, responsibility, and accountability is all on you, falls squarely on your shoulders. So I think it's great personally because I believe that you can't wait for a handout to change things. You got to be proactive. And in today's times, and COVID has shown us that you got to have your systems and structures in place to ensure that times are challenging. People are not investing in sports. So you got to think a little bit more creatively how you're gonna go about being sustainable, because that's ultimately what you want. You want to create something that lasts for a very long time for future generations to enjoy.
I find the position of independent people quite important nowadays when it comes to clubs, because if you're all thinking in a certain way, you can't see that you're doing something wrong or that something's not working in the club. And if somebody else comes in from externally and comes in and says, but hold on a second, have you tried this? Or you actually, and especially in South Africa where we've got our past, where some people are coming back and said, hold on a second, but you can't do it that way. You actually, you're not open to everybody that's actually at your club, and therefore you become an elitist or whatever it is, or there's racism in the club because of it and stuff. It's quite important to have somebody externally to come in and say and have the ability to actually have a voice.
Absolutely, it's just to see that to give you another point of view. I mean, everybody, the big in the UK, I'm sure is about diversity of thinking. I actually think that. Too often we sort of look past women in South Africa. I've had magnificent cricket coaching chats with some of the female coaches here in Eastern Province. So I thought, wow, I'm going to use that for our practice. I never thought of that. I've never heard a coach talk about that. So they're all, you got to have a good mix of people from different backgrounds. That doesn't mean they have to look different on paper. They just have to think differently. We often confuse that in South Africa, where people from different experiences. And I think there's a great thing on Matthew Syed. I don't know if anyone knows him, but he speaks a lot about diversity and thinking. If you have 10 people with the same thinking, you're only going to get 10 thoughts, 10 different ideas. But if you have 10 different people, you're going to get 100 different ideas, which is also challenging to find the right idea, but it gives you a better chance of success. So that's another thing that, you need to consider in terms of board structures and diversity. I find New Zealand are quite progressive with this. If you look at the makeup of their cricket board, I think there are more females than males on the board, with various backgrounds. Either they played cricket, they've been involved in some sort of high-level governance, and there's a great mix of people from different Maori culture, whatever. Because and it's no coincidence that they are probably the model for cricket governance globally. Is New Zealand cricket, and it's no coincidence that they have a diverse group of people, diverse thinking, around a table, which they come to the best outcomes with limited resources, might I add. So, I believe it's massive, and it's a little bit like society in South Africa. Maybe we need to grow up a little bit and give women a lot more power than we actually do, because they actually bring so much more to the table, than we might think.
Now, with good governance and actually being able to show that you've met certain targets and goals, and you've got a vision and you've got something to work towards, it's actually quite important for even sponsors to actually sponsor a club and actually bring extra money in. So how do you, it's quite difficult. I mean, I'm just thinking about it in the past with clubs. Clubs used to struggle. And it always used to be the same thing. We used to have a club, put a club there, you just run the sport, and that's it. But now you've got to think a lot bigger than that. And sponsors are looking for things, and sponsors actually have to know what they're sponsoring. They're not just going to give you money anymore. It's got to make business sense. So how do you communicate this vision of yours to sponsors, to attract sponsors and bring in money to keep the sustainability going, as you said, in the club?
Yeah, I think that's where the whole storytelling element comes in. You've got to sell the vision to people. I mean, sponsors want a return of investment, whether that's improving society or that results in more sales or a feel-good project for that they can take to their board. So it is important. I think you got to be transparent about what you want to do. I think often we try and operate in silos in South Africa. If that's what you want to do and have the vision for the club, I think you've got to communicate it well, to all stakeholders. Don't hide what you're trying to do. Tell everybody that this is where we're going and hold yourself accountable. Find ways to hold yourself accountable to, that's what you said you're going to do. You gave timelines for this, that and the other, and you delivered on it. So that's how you build trust. And ultimately, it all revolves around trust. And if you're accountable, you're transparent, accountable, you're going to build trust with people because it's a well communicated vision. So I think, gone are the days, and you got to set your clubs up where you don't want handouts and grants. You want to show sponsors that, listen here, this is how we're going to give you a return on with what you investing in us. So, and that only comes with transparency, really, which is one of the biggest things with governance, is having a transparent vision and selling it not only to sponsors, but to every stakeholder of the club or the community, wherever the club's situated.
I think also with this is that you mustn't be scared to actually turn around to a sponsor and say your vision doesn't align with ours, and pick your sponsors also correctly, something that does align with the club. And I know it's difficult because you need money and stuff, but if a sponsor's doing things that you don't find morally correct or something, you can't have them as one of your sponsors because it'll bring down your club too.
Yeah, so there's always ethical issues around governance. I mean, you think of cricket. Cricket's got a big match fixing scandals. It's been in the headlines for match fixing and spot fixing, whatever you want to call it. But yet, if you look at a lot of betting companies are coming into cricket now. So at some point you also have to be realistic that to survive, you're not aligning your values, I don't think, with the sponsor, but just making them aware that these are our values. They might not completely match yours, but those two values align with us, and we'll drive those two in conjunction with what we do. So I mean, it's never easy. I think those are always ethical issues, and that's for people that sit on boards to decide whether they want to be aligned with the sponsor or not. At the end of the day, whether they feel that do we need the money to invest in the game, to grow the game, and hopefully maybe down the track find other sponsors. But sometimes things are tight and you don't really have a choice. But that's a ethical issue for people that sit around the table to discuss.
Yeah, I suppose if it's a minor kind of thing, it's fine. You can go along with it. You've got to see how big the actual idea is. And that's something here with colonialism here in the UK, and companies that have supported colonialism and haven't actually renounced on it. You can't have them as your sponsors. And it doesn't matter if it's a big bank. It doesn't make a difference. That's something that's major. That's a huge thing. But they've got smaller issues that they can push aside, which doesn't make a difference in your day-to-day running, of what you're doing. So. But thank you so much, Robbie. This hour's passed very, very quickly. I still got loads of questions, but we can always have a chat at another stage or something like that and go into more details. And I'm sure you want to go home. You've got a little guy waiting for you.
Yeah, I've actually got to do some homework now. So, but it's been great. No, I'd love to come back again. I know there's a couple of people on here that probably know a little bit more than me about governance, but it's only things that I've learned in the past year and how important it is, and about leadership. And I mean, we only need to look at governance in South Africa and our sport, that how important role it actually plays, you know, in attracting sponsors and sustainability and attracting talent to the game, you know. So it's been it has gone quickly. It's been enjoyable, and thanks for the invite, Sean. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone that was listening.
Thank you so much, Robbie, and have a great evening. And I agree with you. Governance, especially in South Africa, has become quite a big thing. And schools now are taking active roles in trying to change the old way of doing things. I know we've got Anton Ferreira on here, and he's very, very active, from what I understand, on his side, and trying to make sure that the schools in Joburg and in South Africa are, you know, changing the old ways of doing things. And it's great to see. It's great to see so many people so active in trying to improve South Africa. And yes, I mean, cricket's going through a bit of a slump at the moment, but it won't be like that forever. And with all the hard work that everybody else is doing, we'll definitely step up, and things will change very, very quickly in South Africa. So
yeah,
thank you
thanks,
so much,
man. I think the pandemic has given everybody an opportunity to sort of find new ways of doing things. So, you know, we cannot let this opportunity pass us. You know, we got to get a little bit more creative in what we're doing. So thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. Peace.
Thank you so much. And just for everybody else that's here, our next webinar will be in 2 weeks' time with Farouk Khan. I'm sure a lot of you know him. He's a legend when it comes to football, and guys like Luther Singh have come through his academies. And of course, you've seen him on TV as a commentator, but he's got a huge knowledge in football. And within the next couple of days, we'll send out the invite to our next webinar. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a great, great evening. Thanks.